welcome back to Storytime with YDRC. This episode, we're going to continue reading Warriors, Fire, and Ice. Now, last time, we left off right at the beginning of chapter 30, so that's what we're going to continue for this episode. So let's get started. Tiger Claw addressed the warriors in a fierce hiss that carried through the blizzard. Wait, Storm. Wait until you hear my battle cry. One Whisker, you lead us through the camp entrance. We'll take care of the rest. One Whisker began to race down the slope toward the snow-covered bushes. Tiger Claw thundered after him, Darkstripe at his heels. Fireheart charged behind the sleek gray tabby, through the narrow tunnel that led into the Wind Clan camp. The gorse was as dense and sharp as he remembered. Graystripe and the other warriors stayed at the top of the slope, a fresh wave of attack ready to strike after the initial barrage. Fireheart skidded to a halt, reeling at the sights that greeted him in the camp clearing. Last time he'd been there, in search of the scent trail that would lead them to the missing clan, now the place had been... that would lead them to the missing clan, the place had been deserted and silent. Now, the clearing swarmed with writhing, screeching, fighting cats. One Whisker had been right. The Wind Clan cats were hopelessly outnumbered. A fresh party of Shadow Clan and River Clan warriors waited at the edge of the clearing, but Wind Clan could spare no backup group. The whole clan was fighting, apprentices and elders, warriors and queens. Fireheart spotted Morningflower wrestling with a Shadow Clan warrior. The Wind Clan queen looked exhausted and frightened, her fur standing in ragged clumps. Still, she nimbly turned and scratched her attacker, but he was much bigger and knocked her easily to the ground with a heavy blow. With a howl, Fireheart leaped and landed squarely on the shoulders of the Shadow Clan Tom. He clung on while the surprised warrior spun and tried to shake him loose. Morningflower raked the Tom with her claws as Fireheart dragged him to the ground. The Shadow Clan warrior screeched and ripped himself free. He ran into the prickly camp wall and pushed his way through. Morningflower shot a grateful glance at Fireheart and turned back to the battle. Fireheart looked around, shaking drops of blood from his nose. The fresh patrols of Shadow Clan and River Clan cats had joined the fight now. Thunder Clan's arrival had evened the numbers for a while, but now the second party was needed. Fireheart heard Tiger Claw's battle cry ring out, and a moment later a white storm exploded into the clearing, followed by Graystripe, Running Wind, and the rest of the Thunder Clan warriors. Fireheart grabbed a River Clan warrior, tripping him with one paw and holding him down with another. He rolled the Tom over and thrashed at his belly with his hind claws. The River Clan cat leaped away and crashed into a Wind Clan warrior. The warrior turned in surprise. Fireheart recognized One Whisker straight away and watched as he reared and attacked the River Clan Tom without a moment's pause. Fireheart could see the fire in One Whisker's eyes. He would leave him to finish this fight. A familiar hiss caught Fireheart's attention. Graystripe was battling with a gray Shadow Clan cat. It was Wetfoot, a warrior who had helped them fight to rid Shadow Clan of Broken Star. The two warriors were well matched. Graystripe thrust Wetfoot away with his back legs and spun around, looking for another cat to attack. Fireheart could see a River Clan cat right behind Graystripe. Above the din of the battle, he heard the blood roar in his ears. Would Graystripe attack one of Silverstream's fellow warriors? Graystripe leaped, and Fireheart held his breath. Instead of jumping onto the River Clan cat, Graystripe sailed over him and landed instead on the back of another Shadow Clan warrior. Fireheart heard Tiger Claw call his name. He twisted his head and saw the warrior at the other end of the clearing. The fighting was thick up there, with cats from all clans battling together. As he charged through the Thunder Clan to the Thunder Clan deputy, Fireheart felt Leopard Fur grasp his hind leg, pulling him down. "You!" hissed the River Clan deputy. They had last met at the gorge, where White Claw had died. Fireheart threw her off and flipped over onto his back. Too late. He realized he'd exposed his soft belly. She reared up and came down on Fireheart with all her might. Fireheart felt the wind knocked out of him before the thorn-sharp claws dug into his belly. He screamed in agony. As his eyes rolled, he saw Tiger Claw at the side of the clearing, watching him with cold, expressionless eyes. "Tiger Claw!" Fireheart howled. "Help me!" But Tiger Claw didn't move. He just stared as Leopard Fur clawed Fireheart again and again. Sheer rage gave Fireheart the strength he needed. He fought through the pain, drew back his hind legs, and pushed up against Leopard's belly as hard as he could. Fireheart saw a look of shock on the deputy's face as the kick lifted the warrior and flung her halfway across the clearing. Fireheart struggled to his paws and glared at Tiger Claw, burning with pain and rage. Tiger Claw met his gaze with a look of undisguised hatred and leaped away into the thick of the battle. A blow on the back of his head knocked Fireheart off balance. He staggered and turned to see Stonefur. The RiverClan warrior was preparing to aim another swipe. Fireheart ducked out of the way and shoved Stonefur straight into Whitestorm. The ThunderClan cat whipped around and grasped Stonefur by the scruff of his neck. Fireheart tried to dart forward and help the Whitefurred warrior, but his claws held him back, digging into his haunches. He twisted to see who it was and glimpsed gray fur. It was Silverstream. The she-cat's face was twisted with battle rage as she reared up at him. Blood was dripping into her eyes, and Fireheart could tell that she hadn't recognized him. She drew back a paw, and he saw her long claws flash as she prepared to swipe him. As Fireheart screwed up his eyes, bracing himself for the blow, he heard an achingly familiar yowl. "Silverstream! No!" Graystripe, thought Fireheart. Silverstream hesitated, shook her head, and recognized Fireheart with a muted gasp. She dropped back down to all four paws, her eyes wide with shock. Fireheart reacted instinctively, his blood aflame with battle. Without thinking, he leaped onto the back of the RiverClan she-cat and pinned her to the ground. She didn't struggle as he drew back his head and prepared to give her a vicious bite on her shoulder. But as Fireheart raised his head, he felt Graystripe's eyes boring into him. The Grey Warrior was watching in horror from the edge of the battle. The look of pain and disbelief in his friend's eyes brought Fireheart to his senses. He stopped, sheathed his claws, and loosened his grip on Silverstream. The she-cat slipped away from him and disappeared into the surrounding gorse. Fireheart stared, still in shock, as Graystripe raced after her. Fireheart felt as if he were still being watched. He looked around and his eyes met Darkstripe's on the other end of the clearing. Fireheart flinched. Graystripe's affair had forced him into disloyalty to ThunderClan after all. He had let an enemy warrior go. How much had Darkstripe seen? Just then, Fireheart heard Running Wind yowl for help. The tabby warrior was grappling desperately with Nightstar, ShadowClan's treacherous leader. Fireheart darted through the throng to Running Wind's side. Without pausing to think, Fireheart leaped, grabbing Nightstar from behind. The black warrior howled in rage as Fireheart pulled him backward and sank his claws deep into Nightstar's fur. He had fought side by side with this warrior only a few moons ago to help him drive out the Broken Star. Now he sank his teeth into Nightstar's shoulder with the same ferocity he had used against the former ShadowClan leader. Nightstar squealed and twisted in Fireheart's grip. This Tom had not been made leader for nothing, thought Fireheart, struggling to hang on. Nightstar scrabbled free, but Running Wind was ready. He pounced, and together the two warriors rolled across the frozen clearing. Fireheart watched them struggle and twist, timing his moment perfectly so that when he finally leaped, he landed squarely on Nightstar's back. He grasped him more firmly this time, ready for the warrior to wriggle free. But Running Wind also had a grip. Together they scratched and bit the ShadowClan leader till he screeched out loud. Then they released him, springing backward with their claws still unsheathed. Nightstar leaped to his paws and spun around, hissing. Fireheart saw the fury in his eyes, but the ShadowClan leader knew he was beaten. He backed away, his eyes darting around the clearing where his warriors were suffering similar treatment from the other ThunderClan warriors. He gave the yowl of retreat. Instantly, his warriors stopped fighting and, like their leader, backed into the gorse that surrounded the camp. The RiverClan warriors were left alone to fend off ThunderClan and WindClan. Fireheart paused to catch his breath, blinking blood from his eyes. Whitestorm was grappling with Leopard Fur now, with Mousefur at his side. Sandstorm was battling with a RiverClan warrior almost twice her size, but her opponent was only half her speed. Fireheart watched as Sandstorm nip and twist around him until the RiverClan warrior looked overwhelmed. Dustpelt was fighting a smoky black Tom nearby. Fireheart recognized Black Claw, the RiverClan warrior he had seen chasing rabbits in the uplands. Dustpelt was stubbornly refusing to be cowed by the blows and bites aimed at him. Each time he was struck, the young warrior turned and gave as good as he got. It looked as if he didn't need any help, and Fireheart guessed Dustpelt would not thank him for interfering in this fight. Where was Crooked Star? Fireheart searched the clearing for the River Clan leader. It wasn't hard to find him. Now that Shadow Clan had run away, the clearing was less crowded. Fireheart soon spotted the light-colored tabby with the twisted jaw. He was crouching low, face to face with Tiger Claw. The two warriors stared at each other, their tails thrashing menacingly. Fireheart's blood pounded through his veins as he waited for one of them to make a move. It was Crooked Star who leaped first, but Tiger Claw jumped nimbly aside and Crooked Star missed. Tiger Claw was more accurate. He turned and lunged at Crooked Star's back. The ThunderClan warrior grasped the RiverClan leader with his long claws, and Crooked Star went limp beneath him. Fireheart watched breathlessly as Tiger Claw bared his teeth, lunged forward, and sank them deep into Crooked Star's neck. Fireheart gasped. Had Tiger Claw really killed the RiverClan leader? Crooked Star's pain screech told Fireheart that Tiger Claw had missed the spine, but it was the blow to win the battle. Tiger Claw released his opponent and let him race, yowling, toward the camp entrance. As soon as Crooked Star's tail shot out of sight, his warriors struggled free and pelted after him. In a heartbeat, the Wind Clan camp fell silent, apart from the howling of the wind above the gorse. Fireheart stared around him. The ThunderClan warriors were tired and battered, but the Wind Clan cats looked far worse. Every one of them was bleeding, while some lay unmoving on the frozen ground. Barkface, their medicine cat, wasted no time in rushing from one cat to another, attending to their injuries. Tallstar limped toward Tiger Claw, blood dripping from his cheek. As he watched the Wind Clan leader, Fireheart remembered his dream from moons ago. Tallstar had been silhouetted against the bright fire, like a warrior sent from StarClan to save them. Fire will save the clan, according to Spotted Leaf's prophecy. But looking at the Wind Clan cats, exhausted and beaten, Fireheart wondered if his dream had misled him. How could these cats represent the fire that StarClan promised would save his clan? Surely it was ThunderClan that had just saved Wind Clan again. Tallstar spoke quietly to Tiger Claw. Fireheart couldn't hear the words they shared, but he could guess that Tallstar's bowed head, that the Wind Clan leader was acknowledging the debt he owed to ThunderClan. Tiger Claw sat up straight and accepted the thanks with his chin held high. Fireheart felt a wave of revulsion at the Dark Warrior's arrogance. He would never forget that Tiger Claw had stood by and watched while Leopard Fur had nearly ripped him to shreds. Here, Fireheart was shaken from his thoughts by the soft voice of Willowpelt offering him a mouthful of the medicine cat's herbs. Fireheart purred his thanks as Willowpelt began squeezing juice from the herbs into the bite marks on Fireheart's shoulders. The juice stung, but the smell took him straight back to another time, with Spotted Leaf. She had given him the same herb to treat Yellowfang so many moons ago. As the odor of the herbs wafted up, Fireheart remembered his dream the night before. Beware a warrior, Spotted Leaf had warned him. Beware a warrior? The truth washed over Fireheart like a chill wind. It wasn't Graystripe he should have been wary of, but Tiger Claw. How could he have suspected his friend, when he knew what Tiger Claw was capable of? Suddenly, Fireheart was sure Ravenpaw had been telling the truth. Whatever Bluestar had said. Seeing the Dark Warrior's performance today, Fireheart realized that Tiger Claw could easily have killed Redtail and walked away without remorse. You fought well, Fireheart, Running Wind interrupted his thoughts. The brown tabby blinked warmly at Fireheart as he promised, I'll make sure Bluestar hears about it. Yes, agreed Willowpelt. You're a fine warrior. StarClan will honor you for this. Fireheart looked at them both, his ears twitching with pleasure. It was a relief to feel part of the clan again. Suddenly, Fireheart's fur prickled. Darkstripe was stalking across the clearing toward Tiger Claw. He sat down behind Tallstar and waited until the Wind Clan leader walked away. Then he leaned forward and whispered urgently into Tiger Claw's ear. The two warriors kept glancing toward Fireheart. He saw, thought Fireheart, feeling dizzy with horror. He saw me let Silverstream go. Are you okay? asked Willowpelt. Fireheart realized he'd shivered. Yes, sorry. Just thinking. Tigerclaw was stalking toward him, his eyes shining with spiteful satisfaction. Well, if you're sure, I'll go and see some others, meowed Willowpelt. Yes, fine, meowed Fireheart. Thanks. Willowpelt picked up her herbs and pouted away. Running Wind followed her. Tigerclaw flattened his ears and drew back his lip in a snarl as he looked down at Fireheart. Darkstripe says you let a RiverClan she-cat escape. Fireheart realized there was nothing he could say. No matter how difficult Greystripe had made things for him, there was no way he was going to betray his friend to this warrior. He longed to yell back that Tigerclaw had stood and watched while a RiverClan warrior tried to kill him. But who would believe him? Darkstripe padded up to stand beside Tigerclaw. Fireheart longed for the wisdom and fairness of Bluestar, but she was far away, back at the ThunderClan camp. He took a deep breath, preparing to speak as Tigerclaw stared menacingly down at him. Then it dawned on Fireheart that any disloyalty he had shown on Greystripe's behalf meant nothing to this great warrior. That wasn't the real reason for Tigerclaw's persecution of him. The deputy was still afraid of what Fireheart might have learned from Ravenpaw about Redtail's death all those moons ago. But unlike Ravenpaw, Fireheart wasn't going to live in fear. His eyes challenged the dark deputy, and he growled. She escaped, yes, like Crooked Star escaped from you. Why? Did you want me to kill her? Tigerclaw's tail lashed the cold ground. Darkstripe says you didn't even scratch her. Fireheart shrugged. Perhaps Darkstripe should chase after the she-cat and ask her if it's true. Darkstripe looked ready to spit, but he remained silent as Tigerclaw spoke. He doesn't need to. Darkstripe tells me your young gray friend chased after her. Perhaps he'll be able to tell us how badly she was scratched. For the first time since they'd entered the battle, Fireheart felt the chill of the wind. The gleam in Tigerclaw's eye hinted at a veiled threat. Had the Dark Warrior guessed about Greystripe's love for Silverstream? Fireheart was still searching for words when Greystripe appeared, squeezing through the camp entrance. Look who's back, sneered Tigerclaw. Do you want to ask him how the she-cat is? No, wait. I can guess his answer. He'll just tell me he didn't manage to catch up with her. Not bothering to disguise the scorn in his eyes, Tigerclaw stalked away with Darkstripe behind him. Fireheart looked over at Greystripe. His friend's face was lined with exhaustion and worry. Fireheart padded across the clearing to meet him. Would Greystripe still be resentful of Fireheart's interference? Would he be angry that Fireheart had tried to attack Silverstream, or grateful that he'd let her go? Greystripe stood silently, his broad head hanging down. Fireheart reached forward with his nose and gently touched his friend's cold gray flank. He felt Greystripe's rumbling purr and looked up. Greystripe gazed back at him. His eyes were sad, but there was no trace of the anger that Fireheart had seen in them lately. Is she okay? Fireheart asked under his breath. Yes, whispered Greystripe, and thanks for letting her go. Fireheart blinked at him. I'm glad she wasn't hurt, he meowed. Greystripe held his gaze for a moment, then meowed. Fireheart, you were right. The battle wasn't easy. It felt like I was fighting Silverstream's clanmates, not enemy warriors. He lowered his eyes, ashamed. But I still can't give her up. The Grey Warrior's words filled Fireheart with foreboding, but he couldn't help sympathizing with his friend. This is something you have to work out by yourself, he meowed. It's not my place to judge you. Greystripe looked up at Fireheart as he went on. Greystripe, whatever you decide to do, I will always be your friend. Greystripe stared at him, his eyes clouded with relief and gratitude. Then, without speaking, the two warriors lay down, side to side, in the unfamiliar clearing. For the first time in moons, their fur was pressed together in friendship. Above them, the snow-heavy gorse offered them a brief shelter from the storm that raged over their heads. Alright, so that is the end of Warriors, Fire and Ice. So, since we still have plenty of time, we're going to continue with the prologue of the next book, the next book, which is Warrior's Forest of Secrets. So let's get started with this one. Prologue. Cold gripped the forest, fields, and moorland like an icy claw. Snow covered everything, glittering faintly under a new moon. Nothing broke the silence in the forest except for the occasional soft rush of snow sliding from the branches of trees as the faint rasping of dried reeds when the wind swept through them. Even the murmur of the river was stilled by the ice that stretched from bank to bank. There was a flicker of movement at the edge of the river. A large tomcat, his bracken-colored fur fluffed up against the cold, emerged from the reeds. He shook snow impatiently from his paws as he sank into the soft drifts with every step. In front of him, two tiny kits struggled forward with faint mews of distress. They floundered in the powdery snow, the fur on their legs and belly matted into icy clumps. But every time they tried to stop, the tomcat nudged them on. The three cats trudged along the river until it widened out, and they drew level with a small island not far from the bank. Thick beds of reeds surrounded it, their dry stems poking up through the ice. Stunted, leafless willow trees concealed the center of the island behind snow-covered boughs. Almost there, the bracken-colored Tom meowed encouragingly. Follow me. He slid down the bank into a narrow frozen pathway through the reeds and leaped into the dry, crisp earth of the island. The bigger of the two kits scrambled after him, but the smaller one collapsed on the ice and crouched there, mewing pitifully. After a moment's pause, the tomcat jumped down beside it and tried to nudge it to its paws, but it was too exhausted to move. The tomcat gave its ears a lick, roughly comforting the helpless scrap, then picked it up by the scruff of its neck and carried it onto the island. Beyond the willow trees was a stretch of open ground broken by bushes. Snow covered the earth here, crisscrossed by the paw marks of many cats. The clearing seemed deserted, but bright eyes gleamed from the shelter, watching the tomcat as he led the way to the largest clump of bushes, and through the outer wall of tangled branches. The icy chill of the air outside gave way to the warmth of the nursery and the smell of milk. In a deep nest of moss and heather-gray she-cat, a heather-gray she-cat was suckling a single tabby kit. She raised her head as the tomcat drew closer and gently set down the kit he was carrying. The second kit staggered into the nursery behind him and tried to scrabble its way into the nest. Oakheart? Meowed the she-cat. What have you got here? Kits, Greypool, Oakheart replied. Will you take them? They need a mother to look after them. But Greypool's amber eyes were shocked. Whose kits are they? They're not RiverClan's. Where did you get them? I found them in the forest. Oakheart did not meet the she-cat's eyes as he spoke. They're lucky a fox didn't find them first. In the forest? Meowed the queen, her voice rasping with disbelief. Oakheart, don't talk to me as if I'm mouse-brained. What cat would abandon her kits in the forest, especially in weather like this? Oakheart shrugged. Rogues, maybe, or two legs. How would I know? I couldn't leave them there, could I? He noticed the smaller kit, which was lying completely still except for the rapid rise and fall of its tiny ribs as it breathed. Greypool, please. Your other kits died. And these will die too, unless you help them. Greypool's eyes clouded with pain. She looked down at the two kits. Their tiny mouths gaped pink as they mewed pitifully. I have plenty of milk, she murmured, half to herself. Of course I'll take them. Oakheart puffed out his breath in a sigh of relief. He picked up the first one kit, then the other, and laid them next to Greypool. She nudged them gently into the curve of her belly next to her own kit, where they began to suckle eagerly. I still don't understand, Greypool meowed when they were settled. Why would two kits be alone in the forest in the middle of a leaf bare? Their mother must be frantic. The bracken-colored Tom prodded a piece of moss with one massive front paw. I didn't steal them, if that's what you're thinking. Greypool looked at him for a long moment. No, I don't think you did, she meowed at last. But you're not telling me the whole truth, are you? I've told you all you need to know. No, you haven't. Grapel's eyes flashed with anger. What about their mother? I know what it's like to lose kids, Oakhart. I wouldn't wish that kind of grief on any cat. Oakhart lifted his head and glared at her, a faint growl coming from the depths of his throat. Their mother is probably some rogue cat. This is not the weather to go looking for her. But Oakhart, just take care of the kids, please. The bracken-colored Tom sprang to his paws and turned abruptly to push his way out of the nursery. I'll bring you some fresh kill, he meowed over his shoulder as he left. When he had gone, Graypool bent her head over the kits, rasping her tongue over their fur to warm them. The melting snow had washed away most of their scent, though Graypool could still make out the odors of the forest, dead leaves and frostbitten earth. And there was something beneath that, fainter still. Graypool paused in her licking. Had she really sensed that, or was she imagining things? Dipping her head again, she opened her mouth to breathe in the kits' scents. Her eyes grew wider, and she stared unblinking into the dark shadows that edged the nursery. She was not wrong. The fur of these two motherless kits, whose origins Oakhart refused to explain, unmistakably carried the scent of an enemy clan. Alright, so that's where we're going to end off this episode of Warriors, Fire and Ice at Chapter 1 of the next book. So that's it for this episode, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!